Ladies and gentlemen, we just got a little technical issue up here we're trying to resolve first before we start the meeting. Thanks for your patience. For those of you online, we're still working on a little bit of a technical issue. And once we get that resolved, we'll be starting the meeting. Good, all done. Great. Good afternoon and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment hearings for Suburban Panel 2. We're a City of Ottawa quasi-judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variances to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Centrepoint Drive. We are also enable remote participation by video conference for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube and the video will be archived and available for viewing by the public at a future time. My name is Fabian Poulam. I'll be chairing today's hearings and you can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Jay Baltz, George Barrett, Heather McLean, and Julianne Wright. The procedure for the hearings will be as follows. Listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today, we'll hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing that they did so, or they'll need to swear and affirm an oath today that they've fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of an application, followed by questions for the applicant and city planning staff. We'll then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak and may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant who has the burden of proof will have the opportunity to make a final comment and reply. Please address your comments to me as chair, stating your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, panel may either make an oral decision or may reserve our decision, which means it won't be delivered today. In either case, and within 10 days, the committee adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to the parties and participants and everyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure we'll be following today? No questions. We have several applications to hear, but we first need to deal with some preliminary procedural matters. Are there any declarations of interest on this panel or on any of the other panels? I have a declaration of interest on application number 11 having to do with 243 Bradford Street. I will be stepping down for any discussions about that application. We have 2 minutes of past meetings to adopt. First of all, I'd like to ask the panel to adopt The minutes of October 31. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Chair, I have to abstain. I wasn't at that meeting.
Thank you very much. I didn't see you, Member Barrett. Did you raise your hand?
Yes,
Yep.
I did.
Perfect, thank you. And we also have to adopt the minutes of November the 14th. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
I abstain as well.
Okay, Julianne Moore abstains. She wasn't available that day. But it is passed, so we confirm both those minutes. We'll proceed now with dealing with the adjournment requests. We will first deal with item 11 having to do with 243 Bradford Street. And as I mentioned earlier, I will be stepping away from this decision. I'll let Mr. Baltz take over for me. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is number 11, 243 Bradford Street. And at first, so Planning Department has asked for an adjournment on this. And who is here for this one from Planning?
Sole Soyak, Planning Department.
Thank you.
The Planning Department requested an adjournment, given that the application has changed significantly. The adjournment is to provide enough time for the application to be processed and circulated. New notices need to be rewritten and stated, as there are no longer parking variances, and the building is no longer requiring consent as well.
Thank you. Mr. Jokatsi. I understand you're opposing the request for adjournment.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we're opposing the request for adjournment. Krista Lidman will address the concerns.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. The application before you today has been amended, but it's been simplified significantly from what was circulated, so that previously we were seeking consent to sever, to divide the property into two and to build two 10-unit apartment buildings. The request before you then included 5 minor variances. What we're here for today is 1 minor variance and no consents to sever. The minor variance is as was circulated. It's the same side yard setback that is sought. So for that reason, we don't believe that a recirculation is required. The previous adjournment was granted to give the applicant the opportunity to work with staff and with the community to allay some of their concerns, and that's precisely what has been done. The form of development has been decreased, the variances have decreased, and the consent to sever is no longer before you. So for these reasons, we would like the opportunity to be heard today on the single variance that remains.
Are there any questions from the panel? So the test for whether this needs to be recirculated or not is whether the original circulation sufficiently describes the purpose and effect of the variance. So I'm wondering if you could address that directly. That this seems to be a very different built form that's being circulated now, being proposed now than what was circulated.
It is a different built form, but the variance, the side yard setback variance of 0.92 meters from a requirement of 1.2 meters is the same. And so I think anyone that would have taken an interest in the more dense development would have the same or less of an interest now. And I don't believe anyone would have an increased interest where we have 1 variance versus the previous 5. The variance was circulated.
So can I ask for a response from planning about the extent of the, whether that sufficiently describes the purpose and effect or not?
Staff had believed that it doesn't, that it's a different build form. Now we're talking about townhomes. So some of the performance standards have changed. I believe on my report, I had also stated that staff had some reservations regarding, you know, if this were to go to a building permit and additional dwelling units were to be seeked, then some of the standards or the definition might have changed and classify this as a stacked dwelling, in that case, parking requirements will be different and more parking will be required. Therefore, perhaps there'll be more variances needing.
Oops, thank you. Do we have any registered speakers for this one?
Yes, Mr. Chair, there are some registered speakers.
So I should ask if any of the registered speakers, or we'll ask those first, wish to address just the request for adjournment. We're not talking about the actual application now. Please come forward and turn on the microphone and give your name and address, please.
Thank you, Chair and committee members, for this opportunity. My name is Karen Patzer, Patzer. I live at 235 Bradford Street, and I'm the president of the Britannia Village Community Association. So I speak today on behalf of the BVCA. So members of our community association have been working with residents of the Bradford Street block most affected by this development proposal since we first heard about the two 10-unit buildings which would be built on that property, replacing the existing 6-unit townhouse complex. We heard about it through one of the tenants being evicted from the current building. Our association fully supports the need for housing in the city. It's not an argument about the number having more housing. We do not, however, support a development that goes beyond the scale and size appropriate for the surrounding neighborhood.
Let me, if I may, we're right now only talking about the you'll have,
right,
if this comes back or if it is heard today, you'll have a chance to talk about the actual proposal.
Yeah,
But,
okay, so we do support the adjournment. And the reasons are that the latest proposal, there were two proposals that came in since the last hearing on October 31st. The first one that was circulated. There was another proposal that came in November 29th. And in that proposal, we do say that many of our concerns were listened to, and some of those were addressed. But there was another proposal that came in on December 7th. And we find it quite unclear and confusing as to which proposal they're going forward with. At this point, we're not sure. We see in the proposal that it's referred to a low-rise apartment. It's also referred to as townhouses. And now the city is questioning whether it's stacked dwellings. So we're not sure how many units they intend to build because it says 10, but then it says it's going to go to 16. So we're not sure of that. How many parking spaces will there be? That will depend on the zoning requirement, as the city planner just pointed out. We're concerned and we question, is there parking in front of the building as indicated in the proposal? Because you can see that they have cars drawn in there. So we're wondering if they're going to be allowing and parking on the street. And will the trees illustrated on the drawing on page A06 in front of the buildings be planted? Because it's not the same as what's shown on the drawings on page A03. So there's some inconsistencies within the proposal. And as the city's pointed out, what are the zoning requirements that really apply here? So is it just the setback variance we're talking about, or is the parking actually going to be a variance at some point once the city determines what zoning requirements apply? We also have several questions regarding the planning assumptions being made in the proposal, particularly regarding the 15-minute neighborhood, the extent to which
I think that's now veering into the actual proposal itself.
Okay.
That if this comes back or if it's heard today, everybody gets another kick at the can on the actual proposal.
Okay, so we do support the adjournment. And I think this would be prudent to allow more time for the city to review this new proposal and to provide the community with more clarity on what is actually being proposed on our street and what zoning bylaws actually apply. So we hope the extra time would lead to further improvements, because I think it can, and I think that can achieve the developer's goals and also meet the community needs. So I think there's a win-win to be had to have a bit more time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel? No, George, no. Is there anybody else either registered to speak or who wishes to speak about the adjournment?
I'd like to, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes. Oh, sorry,
I did-
Mr. Barrett.
Yes, I'd just like to mention that there is a lot of confusion, it seems, with the residents on the development and the change in the development. And I think it's prudent to take the time to communicate. There's a couple of different parking designs in our document. So I think we need to relook this for clarity. Thank you.
Thanks. We have one more, at least one more delegate who wishes to speak. Yeah, please come forward. Same as the last, turn on the microphone and state your name and municipal address.
My name is Bob Reichert. I'm at 225 Bradford Street in Britannia Village. So I understand that the developer wants approval for developing 6 townhouses for a total of 10 units, which will later likely be expanded to 16 units. The city has stated that they believe that the latter configuration would be considered a stacked dwelling, and in this case, the zoning standards are different from the townhouse. I believe that the developer is proposing a very piecemeal approach, not really knowing what the end result is going to be. I believe that the proposal needs to be done once and done well, and there is still time to do that. In order to proceed with any construction, the developer needs to demolish the building first. However, there is still one elderly disabled tenant remaining in the development with all of her belongings. To date, the developer has not been successful in evicting this tenant. The tenant's landlord and tenant tribunal hearing is not scheduled until April the 16th, so the developer has lots of time to develop a complete proposal. On this basis, I believe that the proposal should be deferred.
Thank you. Questions from the panel? Not seeing any. Do we have any more speakers or anyone who wishes to speak? Yeah, we'll get back to you, certainly. All right, seeing none, the last word will go to the applicants.
So I think Mr. Jakotski wants to speak as well, but I would just like to say that the proposal that's before you today is for one minor variance. It's based on the plans that have been submitted. It doesn't include a severance, and so it would be inappropriate to adjourn this application to consider a severance that isn't before you, or to consider additional units that might be added through the building permit phase that have not been brought forward. The application is here before you today for one minor variance for 6 townhouse dwellings.
Just a little further comment in terms of circulation and making the community aware. So we did have a meeting with the community, as indicated. And it was at that time that due to the changes that we've had in the planning regime that weren't available at the time that the project was proposed originally, it was determined that given the concerns of the community about a more residential style development, that a townhouse development, 6 units, was appropriate and would meet with the general requirements. The massing is identical to the existing massing. The setbacks have all increased. There's been a number of significant improvements to the property based on the community's concerns. The client is in a position where they want to hit a spring construction season, a recirculation. Well, from the perspective of us coming closer to the requirements of the community, I don't really see an opportunity. We've had 2 public meetings with them, and one prior to the first hearing and one subsequent to that. And we've circulated broadly to the community through the community association on the 27th. The only difference between the 2 applications that they're referring to at this point is that originally we put in an application for 16 units, which we believe is absolutely correct in the sense that it is 6 townhouses under Bill 23 up to one principal unit and accessory unit is permitted. The concern arose from planning staff in terms of what kind of a building is this. Arose from the perspective that the stacked apartment building, which it is not, and we don't believe that the planners have the opportunity to decide that a row dwelling with the prerequisite permitted units in it applies for, becomes a stacked apartment building. And secondarily, the number of units that may or may not be in the building, and whether or not, and this is what came up in our meeting with them, was site plan control bylaw. Because there's been a change in the name from secondary unit to a additional unit, there's a concern that site plan control might be required on the project. Again, that is not before you today at all. It may be before us when we go to apply for a building permit. So that's just broadly to indicate where we're at. We're simply applying 6 townhouses, that's it, with one minor variance on this project, and they're permitted use under the bylaw. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion before we decide? Okay, so the question before us is whether or not to adjourn sine die. And really the question is whether the circulation that already went out for today's hearing was sufficient to describe the purpose and effect of the variances or not. So I will call a vote. A vote yes is to adjourn. So all those in favor of adjourning sine die, please raise your hands. So it passes unanimously. So this will be, so just for everybody, this will be adjourned. There'll be a recirculation like there was before. Another hearing will be scheduled, assuming the applicants are going forward with this. And the process would be the same. You'll have your opportunity to speak, as will the applicant and planning staff, about the merits of the circulated, newly circulated proposal. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody online.
Thank you, Chair and panel.
The next adjournment request is for 100 James Cummings Avenue. Is T. Eisner available? Is T. Eisner online? Okay, we'll step this one down and come back to it. The next application.
Sorry, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Eisner is online now.
Perfect.
Hello.
Mr. Eisner.
Hi.
Hello. There's a request for an adjournment on this application. Do you agree with that, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And when would you like to have it adjourned to?
The next panel meeting would be preferable. I believe it's January 16th.
Okay. All right. I'd like to ask the panel if they agree with this application to be adjourned today to January the 16th. Oh. Well, I don't have any registered speaker, so.
That's fine.
Yeah, I don't think we have a registered speaker for this. So no, I don't think there's anybody else online. So to that end, I'd like to ask for adjournment of this application until January the 16th. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, so your application, Mr. Eisner, is adjourned to the 16th of January. Thank you.
Thank you.
So the next item is two items. Item for number 12, which is 136 Acacia, and then item 13 is 138 Acacia. We've been informed by the agent for this property that he is in agreement with this application being adjourned sine die. So we will, I will now take a vote from the panel to approve this application being adjourned sine die. All those in favor, please raise your hands. This application 12 and 13 have been adjourned sine die. Thank you. Okay, so now we have unopposed applications, and I'll just read them out. They've all met the following qualifications. There are no objections or concerns from the parties, the applicant, the city, or the public. There are no amendments required, no registered speakers. The signposting declaration has been received. The applicant or the agent has confirmed that they agree with all requested conditions if there are any, and there are no questions from the panelists. So I will read out the unopposed agenda or unopposed list of applicants. 148 Lusk Street, 970 and 974 Sheridan Avenue, 17 Chinook Crescent, 40 Frank Nybor Place, 5 Lotus Court, 2501 Greenbank Road, and 81 Boyce Avenue. All of these applications have met the criteria for an unopposed application and fast track consent agenda. I'd like to ask the panel for approval of these applications as they are unopposed. All those in favor, please raise your hands. Thank you very much. These applications have been approved. So now we'll move on to hearing the applications that are left. Item number 4 has to do with 4120I Riverside Drive. And I assume you're Mr. Greg Carter.
Correct. I'm Greg Carter, and I am the owner of 4120I Riverside Drive.
Thank you very much, sir. Can you just give us a brief description of your application today?
Okay, I have a presentation.
Perfect.
Shall we go through that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, my name is Greg Carter, and I'm the owner of 4120 Riverside Drive. I'd like to use my time here to discuss the comments made by the City Planning Department in the document authored by Justin Rift. Next slide, please. I'd like to go over these 4 specific comments: the zoning, the height, the gross floor area, and the planning suggested alternative of an attached garage. Next slide, please. As detailed in the document I submitted with the minor variance request, the properties were wrongly zoned EP in 1998. This was acknowledged in a 1999 letter to our community association from the then Director of Planning, John L. Moser. On the screen is a partial quote from that letter, which reads, "The properties are no longer considered to be an environmentally sensitive area." I will not bore you with why 4120 Riverside is still zone EP with an exception, but I will point out this was finally resolved earlier this year with the help of our councillor, Jessica Bradley. I submitted a very detailed document to the zoning department to request a zoning change to remove any mention of EP. As mentioned in my minor variance document and as seen in the second quote on screen, the 2025 zoning will change to residential. Additionally, in the document prepared by Justin Rift under section environment, the following comments were made, quote, "While the increase in square footage is usually concerned, the fact that the area is already cleared goes a long way towards reducing any potential environmental impacts that might arise from such expansions," end quote. "The area has been a gravel parking area since before I took ownership in 1998. Finally, note that I have applied for and received a letter of permission from the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority to allow the building of the garage. The above details shall alleviate any concerns about the garage with respect to EP zoning." Next slide, please. Height. The city concerns are with the height affecting the owners of H. The garage will be set back from the house at H by approximately 85 feet. The side setback is well over the allowed minimum. A setback of 2.75 meters is proposed versus the 1.5 meters required. The garage at H will be between the house at H and the new garage at I. The existing trees on lot H and I will soften the view of the garage. Next slide, please. This overhead picture shows what was discussed in the previous slide. As you can see, the new garage will be far away from the house at H with large trees and the garage at H between the two buildings. Next slide, please. This is a photo of the rear of the lot of H facing towards I. Outlined in red is the approximate location and height of the proposed garage. As seen, several trees will soften the exposure of the garage to H. I planted some of these trees many years ago, which include white pine, maple, and Norway spruce. By placing the garage to the rear of the lot, further away from the existing garage, this will have a lesser impact on the owners of H than the current garage or an attached garage. The owners of H currently use this area to store a boat, which you can see is that temporary storage structure. Next slide, please. Limiting the size of detached garages to 55 square meters seems to be an arbitrary size, likely derived from suburban subdivisions. Only 1 of 6 existing detached garages meet that size. All others are considerably larger. The 55 square meter limit was not enforced in 2011 for the garage at H. When viewed in the context of the existing garage, the gross floor area increase is minor. Next slide, please. This is a plan view to scale showing the existing garage footprint moved so that it is within the proposed garage footprint. As you can see, it is not much larger, but offers much better opportunity to utilize the space. A modern SUV will actually fit in the garage with room to perform maintenance on it versus the typical space of the 55 square meter garage. Next slide, please. The alternative, city recommends an attached garage. Section 54 defines gross floor area to not include garage space. Therefore, an attached garage is only limited by the lot coverage restriction, which is 20% in this case. The lot size is just under 3,000 meters squared, allowing just under 600 square meters of coverage. The existing lot coverage is 4.9% without the garage. This would allow a larger attached garage than the proposed detached garage without requiring a minor variance. There would be no chance for the community to comment on the design, as the design would meet all current zoning. An attached garage seems like a loophole that rewards bad architecture. The attached garage would block the view from H, result in removal of trees, and be built to the minimum setback of 1.5 meters. Next slide, please. This is a photo taken of I facing H. If an attached garage were constructed, it would be built here. The view from H would go from trees and open space to a wall. I planted these trees. They would all be removed to make room for the attached garage. This seems like a major change to the lot versus the proposed detached garage. Next slide, please. This is an example of what could be built without requiring a minor variance. You can find many articles written about how attached garages are bad architectures. Few encourage them. Why force that upon my neighbors? I don't want to build a McMansion. Next slide, please. This, for some context, is the house at I. H can be seen to the right. Next slide, please. This is the existing garage. I'd argue that is already the dominant structure, not only because of the size, but on the account of it being an eyesore. I do not have any fancy 3D renders of the new garage to woo you with. I will only say that I plan to build a nice looking building using premium materials. Given that the community believes that the proposed garage is minor, I hope that the community does too. As mentioned in the documents submitted with a minor variance, I plan to park and maintain a tractor used to maintain the private road of 4120 Riverside Drive. I'd like to be able to work on it without having to lay in the snow. All of us who live at 4120 Riverside Drive feel very lucky to live here. It is a very unique place. Approving the minor variance would not set a precedent because there are no other places like it in Ottawa. I'll close with a photo and short video of from last week of a typical snow day and what it's like living at 4120 Riverside Drive. Thanks for your time. So if you go to the next video, or sorry, the next, this is, as mentioned, it's a private road that serves all our houses at 4120 Riverside Drive. And this is a typical snow day. This is a stock vehicle, and that's the tractor I want to park in the garage if I can actually build it. And if you go to the video I had.
Less than 1 minute, sir.
Yeah, it's less than 1 minute. If you could play the video, please. Anyways, it's just a video of me pulling that tractor up the hill. Sorry, pulling the stuck vehicle out with my tractor and up the hill. And thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions for the applicant, Mr. Bolts.
So no trees will be removed. The current garage looked like it was built around a tree. Are there trees?
Right. The new garage starts where the current one is and goes. Sorry, the current garage will be demolished. That tree stays, the large, and then the current garage is built further behind.
So it'll be screened from the private road by that, at least that one tree. Then that's the road side. That
tree is like the center of my lot. got my, can I come and show you on here to show you where it is, or? Okay, if you're able to bring up the site plan, as part of this, then I can show you where it is on the site plan, but.
Yeah.
But basically that tree is behind, well, my garage, current garage is where that tree is, and then directly on the lot line behind that is where the H garage is, and then the street, when we say street, it's a private road, so that's the private road that serves all of 4120 Riverside Drive, which is 10 houses, sorry, 11 houses. So there's nothing, the view, there's no view to this to anyone else besides those 10 people that live there. You can't see these houses from Riverside Drive.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McLean, any comments or questions? Excuse me.
I don't think so. I have a question for the planning
Okay,
planning
we'll come back to you
department,
then.
but just perhaps one, struggling with the intent of the zoning bylaw, which is one of the 4 tests. We're dealing with an accessory, a building that should be accessory to the main use, and the size of this. Can you just expand a bit on why you need such a large garage?
Well, for parking, and then for my hobbies. And part of it is so I can park that tractor in there as well. So, and that tractor is used to maintain the private road that we all live on. And I mean, it's more space. I don't word it correctly. Well, for my hobbies and for the parking, and the reason I chose the eave height was so that I could actually get the tractor inside.
Sorry, you have a dormer? Is that a dormer on the roof, or?
The dormer was put to use as skylights.
So you're gonna have a workshop, park your vehicles,
Yes.
and then park the tractor?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And for hobbies specifically, like not for commercial use.
Okay, Mr. Barrett, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Not at this time.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wright, you have any questions? Do you have a business that you run out of that garage?
No,
No? Do you run a
No.
business out of your home?
no, I'm a software developer.
Okay, thanks. All right, so now I'd like to move on to.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, did you want to see the video?
No, you don't have to show it. So.
Okay.
So now we'll move on to our planning department and ask for the planning's some comments from them on this application.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will just put on the video here. Perfect. So just a quick summary of our recommendation or our summary. So we do have some concerns with the proposed height. It is an increase of 1.25 meters, greater than the 6 meters that is permitted in the EP zone. However, I think majority of our concerns comes to the size of the proposed building, and we're recommending a refusal. We're of the opinion it is twice the size of the dwelling. It would no longer be accessory to the dwelling, but would become principal building on the lot as opposed to the dwelling being the principal building, and therefore would not follow the intent of the zoning bylaw, nor do we believe it would be considered minor. And then looking at those other accessory structures along Riverside Drive, the largest one that was detached we found was approximately 94 square meters, varying between 75 to 94. So proposing this one to 268, we felt that it was not compliant with the others in the area. And yeah, that's a brief summary.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to ask the panel 4 questions for Mr. Grift. Mr. Barrett, do you have any questions for Mr. Grift?
Not at this time.
Okay. Ms. Wright, do you have any
I do
questions? No? Ms. McLean?
If the zoning were to change to the residential zone, I think is the understanding, what would be the restrictions on an accessory?
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I did confirm with our zoning interpreter team, and they do not have any intention to increase the maximum size for accessory buildings. So it would remain at 55 square meters across the lot.
Well, just so do I get a chance to
Just
reply?
no, well, you will get a chance.
Okay.
Yes. So Anything else, Mr. Clay?
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bones?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So the existing house in the photos at least looks to be a pretty small structure. But I'm wondering what would be if somebody were to redevelop the house, how big could it be compared to the proposed garage? Because the idea of it being accessory is based on relative size, isn't it? So the as of right size of a house relative to this would be what?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So there is a maximum gross floor area for the principal building on the lot, which is 279 square meters. So the proposed accessory building would be 268. So that's the maximum size that the dwelling can be built on that lot.
Thank you.
What about the height, Mr. Grift? How high would that building, could that building, new principal building be?
The principal building can be 10.7 meters.
And where does this garage fall in?
I believe in the EP zone, the garage maximum height is still 6 meters. If it was attached to the house, that would be the principal dwelling or principal building, so it could be up to 10.7.
Okay.
However, if it's detached, it's 6 meters.
Okay, thank you. Now you can ask that question if you like.
It
Sir?
was just a clarification on the zoning that it hasn't been set yet. And so the 55 square meters is not part of our exception for this area. That 55 square meters comes from the EP zoning. And so when we move to residential, I will be pushing for them to move to rural, the equivalent of rural RU4, because we're, by every definition, when that's what we meet currently, we're on septic, we're on well, we're only bordered on either side. There's wooded areas everywhere. Anyways, we meet rule 4 by every structure, which allows a larger accessory buildings than the 55 square meters.
Okay, and this will allow you to build what you want to build when the zoning changes?
No, I would still need a minor variance in that case.
Okay, okay. Now I'd like to move on to our registered speakers. We have a resident, Donna Allen. Are you available? Come on down. Morning, afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Donna Allen. I live at 4120C Riverside Drive. Now, this area of Riverside Drive is not actually seen from Riverside Drive proper. It's down on the waterfront of the Rideau River. Properties run 4120A to 4120L. Not seen from the public road. I've lived there since 1967. I know it's hard to believe, I'm very young. It's a private road, well off the main road of Riverside, not in view of the main road, to repeat myself. As stated in a letter from our president, Mark McCullough, our community is supportive of this application as submitted. Therefore, I'm here in person on behalf of the members of the Uplands on the Rideau Association to respectfully request that this application be fully approved with no modifications. Because Mr. Carter requires this storage and workspace, and because we quite like the building design that he has shown us, and it also blends with his little ranch style looking house. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Now I'd like to ask if Mark McCullough, president of the Uplands on the Rideau Association, is available. He's also a registered speaker. Are you online, sir?
Hi, sorry, I just had to rejoin as a panelist. Yes, I'm Mark McCullough. I'm a resident as well on 4120 Riverside Drive at Unit K and J. So I border the other side of Greg's property. And certainly I I have no opposition, nor does anyone on our road have any opposition to what Greg has submitted as his proposal to build. We all have very large lots and are quite private and off the beaten path. And so there's been no concern with it being of any sort of eyesore. In fact, we're looking forward to him pulling the other one down. And certainly we rely on Greg with his tractor every winter to, I've seen him pull everything from propane trucks to delivery trucks to babysitters out of trouble on the road. And for him to have somewhere to keep his machinery serviced and in good condition is paramount for us on the road. So I certainly just want to reiterate what Donna said. We are all in favor of his building, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the panel if they've got any questions for our registered speakers. That's right. Mr. Barrett, any questions for our registered speakers?
Just a question to the applicant. So I'm assuming that you maintain the road year round. So that would be if there's trees on it or regrading the road, if there needs to be regrading due to a washout or something. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you do all the maintenance on the road?
Well, yeah, mostly.
Okay.
You know, if for the past few years, that has been correct.
All right. Thank you.
Ms. McLean, any questions for the public? Okay, Mr. Balt, any questions for the public? Okay, thank you. Now, Mr. Carter, you have you've got the last word if you'd like. But before you get there, I would like to ask you if this application is approved today, we have some standard conditions that are required for this application. Are you in favor of those standard conditions?
What are the conditions?
So it's really, it's subject to the location and size of the proposed construction being in accordance with the plans filed with the Committee of Adjustment, date stamped October 31, as they relate to the requested variances. That's the condition.
That means this design can't change at all, or is that?
Well, as they relate to the variance you're requesting.
Right, so I can't add height or make it larger.
Correct.
Right, yeah, that's
okay.
Fine.
So you have the last word, sir.
Just I don't want to waste any more of your time, so. No.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much. I think we'd like to defer the result of this application, reserve it. And so we're going to reserve it, and you will receive our decision within 10 days. It'll be a written decision. Thank you. Now we'll move on to our next application, which is application number 5. And this is having to do with 250 Alfred Street. David Stone, are you available?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Would you please state your name and your address, please?
Sure, I'm David Stone at 42 Hindenburg Place, and I'm a licensed architect practicing in the city.
Great. Could you give us a brief description of your application today?
Sure, absolutely. I do have a presentation. Would you like me to go through that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You have 5 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I could get the next slide, please. So the subject property is a single family residence in the Vanier Ward 12 neighborhood. There's a site context plan. We're located just north of Montreal Road. This image is just showing the immediate context, which is a large quantity of multi-unit housing, high-rise apartment buildings, and a large quantity of commercial retail plaza space and kind of open-air asphalt parking. The property is circled in red. If I could get the next slide, please. Just to zoom in on the immediate block, you can see the subject property in the middle. There's only a small number of single family residences in the neighborhood, and the majority of those do have, just for context, have large outbuildings or rear additions that are built directly on the rear property line. If I could get the next slide, please. This is a snippet of some of the immediate context, including the neighbor's large outbuildings and some of the rear additions in the neighborhood. as well as all of the multi-unit housing immediately adjacent to the subject property. Next slide, please. This is the residence in question, as well as the driveway to the proposed addition, which I'll give you an overview of. Next slide, please. So this is a site plan. So just to describe the proposal, this property is home to a growing family. They have an original 1940s single family residence. It's quite compact, and they're in need of additional storage and parking. They have numerous vehicles, including motorcycles, and the homeowner is a collector and has a requirement for a lot more storage space than he currently has with his single family residence. Also, the family does plan to undertake a large interior renovation of the property, as it's mainly original to 1940s. And this outbuilding, or sorry, this addition proposal would also assist with some of the storage of materials and tools needed to undertake that renovation as well. If I could get the next slide, please. So you can see here the property is 30 meters deep, and the rear yard setback is a requirement of 25% of the lot depth, which results in 7.5 meters. But when we looked at that, you can see there's two large trees in the middle of the rear yard. One of them is a large mature oak tree. And the family really wanted to maintain these oak trees and maintain as much green space and functional backyard space as part of their plans to expand. And this led us to really look at doing a more compact, long linear addition as opposed to kind of a larger addition right off the back of the property. And in order to maintain those two trees and to maintain as much green space for the family as possible. So this resulted in us, with the kind of storage requirements for the number of vehicles they have. It did result in us looking at exceeding that rear yard setback from 7.5 meters to 1.88 meters, or from 25% of the lot depth to 6.1% of the lot depth in total. If I could get the next slide, please. It's the ground floor plan of the rear garage, which would have some openings to the backyard. It also attaches to the rear kind of mudroom and kitchen of the house. And next slide, please. And it would include a loft space for storage that's open to below, as well as a terrace connection to the upper floor of the single family residence. And originally, our original design for this had that terrace at the rear of the addition, but some feedback from planning staff, they had some concerns about the privacy over the adjacent neighbors. So have since revised that design to have the terrace more introspective to the backyard, more private, secluded, as to not have any disturbances with the neighbors there. So that terrace acts as a connecting point between the second floor of the addition and the second floor of the residence. Next slide, please. This is sort of a front elevation of the existing house, showing the compact nature of the garage addition on the side to the south. And we've made sure to keep the height as low as possible with that loft space in order to meet the height requirements. Next slide, please. The homeowner is a metal fabricator by trade and does plan to undertake the construction of this project. And so we're going to be utilizing shipping containers to that effect, but obviously trying to make them as aesthetically pleasing as possible, so they don't appear as an industrial structure in the neighborhood. That being said, the form of them isn't sort of in keeping with a lot of the sort of boxy forms of the neighborhood. And if you go to the next slide, please. And interestingly, there's a new precedent in the neighborhood, which is the Vanier Hub community space, which also utilized shipping containers as part of that kind of public art project.
Less than 1 minute, sir.
Okay, next slide, please. Just a few quick rendered views to give you a sense of the proposal. This is looking from the south, the proposal kind of slipping past the side of the single family residence. Next slide, please. Again, zoomed out. Next slide, please. And this tries to demonstrate sort of the small impact we're trying to have on Alfred Street from the street. Next slide, please. We did do our best effort to step the massing away from the open spaces of the adjoining properties and the neighbors. So the second floor of the addition does step away from the rear and south facing adjacent properties. We're also keen to utilize some planting screens, vine screens, and green roofs on that addition as to minimize the visual impact to the neighbors, as well as to provide a habitat for animals in the neighborhood. Next slide,
Mr.
please.
Stone, I need you to wrap it up.
Okay. That's really the end of my proposal.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to ask the panel if they've got any questions for the applicant. Mr. Barrett.
Yes, a question. Is you're going to incorporate it would be four shipping containers to build this structure, is that correct?
There's actually 6 in total. The lower level is constructed of 4.
I see. And those.
But they're varying, apologies, they're varying sizes though.
So the 40 to 50 foot range, is that what you're?
That's correct. So the lower level is constructed of 2 40-foot containers and 2 20-foot containers. Sorry, 2 30-foot containers and 2 20-foot containers. And then the upper floor is 2 30-foot containers.
Okay. Is there a need to have a foundation of some sort, either a concrete slab or for the containers to sit on?
Yes, that's correct. So we're going to do a slab on grade. We haven't gone through the completion of the engineering exercise yet, but we'll likely be utilizing a thickened perimeter slab foundations as to avoid any deep excavation needed for traditional footings. And that's most likely achievable given that the shipping containers are relatively lightweight relative to traditional structure.
Okay. And another question with regards to the Chapman workhouse, or workshop, which is what term that's used in the presentation. Is it going to be used as a workshop, or what is the use for this structure?
It would be only used for personal use. So, I mean, like I said, there is a large number of tools that the homeowner owns that he'd be storing here, but it would only be used for personal use and hobby use as well as vehicle storage. So there wouldn't be any commercial use of the property.
Yeah, I would be concerned if there was storage, for example, of acetylene or oxygen or any containers that because of the use of that he is a metal fabricator, is that he's not planning on using this as a place and point to fabricate.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Wright, do you have any questions?
I do. Just to address the privacy issues out the back, just to confirm, there's no real access onto the vegetative roof, correct?
That's correct. There's an operable window just to provide in case there's maintenance needed for the roofing or for the vegetation on the roof, but it wouldn't be used as a terrace.
Okay, and the ground floor there's no windows, nothing on the ground floor at the back?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, there's no living area in the structure?
No, that's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Baltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the green wall and the green roof, I assume, are to mitigate, besides being ecologically desirable, or to mitigate the impact on the yard next door, correct?
That's correct.
So I looked at the plans and there's about 2 feet of clearance and an existing, I think, chain link fence within that.
That's right.
So how is that going to be maintained? Can somebody actually get in there?
Yeah, the idea right now is that planting would be in place. Right now, there's a row of hedges, which we would maintain as much of that as we can. But ideally, the vines that would be planted on any sort of lattice work that we put there would be more or less self-sustaining. So they would need minimal maintenance from the property owner.
But yeah, when they die or the lattice falls off or whatever happens eventually, is it possible to access that at all? Or
it would with the 2 feet of clearance between the side of the structure and the property line. Yep. The chain link fence right now is right on the property line, so there would be 2 feet between the structure and the chain link fence.
So you could actually
it's a good question.
You could get in there.
Yeah,
okay,
that's right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to move on to planning services and Jerica Glibert. Comments or questions?
I have none, Mr. Chair.
Are you in support of this application?
I am in support of this application.
Okay, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions for planning? That's right. Mr. Barrett.
Just to you, Jerica, did Did you hear from any community members on the application? Was there any correspondence from the community?
Through you, Chair, no, there was not. And I did visit the property last week and there was the sign on the property. So I do believe proper notice was given if anyone did want to contribute to this application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McLean? No? Mr. Bolts? Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone from the public would like to make any comments? I have Rob Chapman listed here, but I think you're representing him, is that correct?
That's correct. He's the property owner.
Okay. So I don't think we have any other information required by from the public or any information or questions from the public. I guess it's up to you. You have the last word, sir, Mr. Stone, if you'd like to.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity and for the feedback from the planning committee in our initial proposal last year. I think we made good headway in revising the application to make it as beneficial as possible to the neighborhood. So thank you for that.
Okay, great. So I think we'd like to reserve our judgment on this application today. So we'll be reserving our judgment and we will then let you know within 10 days. You'll receive a written decision within 10 days.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I believe that ends our business for today. Thanks everybody for your help and we'll see you on January the 16th.
I'm just curious, are there any other examples of shipping containers in Ottawa as infill yet?
There's one or two. I wouldn't say there's great examples. There are a lot in the great.
Yeah.
There's actually several markets right